Imagine this. You and an alien are looking at the same planet, same stars, same light, same laws of physics, yet you don't see the same reality. Why? Because what you think depends on what you can observe. And what you can observe depends on your speed, your size, your energy, and how time moves for you. Change those conditions, and reality itself changes. So, the difference between human thinking and alien thinking isn't intelligence. It's physics. Let's start very simply. To humans, time feels like a river. It flows in one direction. We are carried along with it. We are born, we grow older, we decay. And because this process is irreversible, time feels urgent. That urgency shapes the way humans think. We worry about the future because we might not reach it. We regret the past because we cannot return to it. The idea of running out of time dominates human decisions, emotions, and fears. But physics tells us something uncomfortable. Time is not as universal as it feels. According to relativity, time depends on motion and gravity. A clock moving very fast ticks more slowly. A clock near a massive object ticks more slowly. So already, even in known physics, there is no single absolute time. Now imagine an alien intelligence that experiences time differently. Perhaps it lives 1,000,000 times longer than a human. Or perhaps its biological or physical processes run much faster or much slower than ours. For such a being, what we call a lifetime might look like a brief flicker. To them, human urgency could look strange. Why rush? Why panic? Why cling so tightly to moments that barely last? Now take the idea one step further. Physics allows us to describe time not just as a flowing experience, but as a dimension like space. In that view, past, present, and future are all part of one structure. Much like cities are all part of a map. A human trapped inside time asks, what will happen next? But an intelligence that relates to time more like a dimension might ask, where are you on the timeline? Not because it knows the future in a magical sense, but because it does not experience time as a narrow moving point. From that perspective, human fear of the future looks like fear of a place you haven't visited yet. And human regret looks like grief over a location you've already passed. So the difference between human thinking and alien thinking about time is not about wisdom or superiority. It's about where you stand relative to time itself. Change how time is experienced, and you change how meaning, urgency, choice, and even identity are formed. Time doesn't just measure thought. Time shapes it. Let's start with something ordinary. Your thoughts feel light, effortless, almost free. But in physics, thinking is not free. Every thought you have costs energy. Inside your brain, neurons communicate using tiny electrical and chemical signals. These signals move slowly a few meters per second, and they run on a very small energy budget. That limitation matters, because when energy is limited, processing must be selective. The brain cannot calculate everything, so it uses shortcuts, emotions, instincts, intuition, stories, beliefs. From a physics point of view, human thinking is an energy-efficient approximation of reality. Now imagine an alien intelligence with access to far more energy. We argue about meanings because we cannot calculate everything directly. An alien with higher energy capacity might not debate philosophy the way we do. It might simply model outcomes. What feels like insight to us might feel like routine calculation to them. And this has consequences. Human thought is emotional because emotions are efficient. They guide decisions without expensive computation. An alien mind may appear cold, detached, or indifferent not because it lacks feeling, but because it doesn't need emotional shortcuts. So when we imagine aliens as either gods or monsters, we miss the real point. The difference is not consciousness versus no consciousness. It is not soul versus machine. It is energy per thought. Change the energy available to a mind, and you change how that mind understands reality. Thought is not just philosophy. Thought is physics running on a power supply. You think in a certain size range. You understand meters. You understand kilometers. You can imagine light years, even though you don't really feel them. Your intuition is built from walking, throwing, lifting, falling, from rooms, roads, cities, and planets. That is your scale. And physics tells us something important. What makes sense depends on scale. At human scale, solid objects feel solid. Time feels continuous. Causes seem clear. But change the scale and the rules appear to change. At the atomic scale, nothing behaves the way you expect. Objects pass through each other. Particles are waves. Certainty disappears. Now imagine an alien intelligence that naturally thinks at a different scale. Perhaps it evolved sensing atomic vibrations directly. Or perhaps it emerged at the scale of radiation, magnetic fields, or space-time curvature. To such a being, atoms might feel as familiar as chairs feel to you. Human bodies, then, would not appear as people. They would appear as temporary patterns. From that perspective, a human is not an individual, but a fluctuating structure made of energy, fields, and particles, briefly holding a shape before dissolving, just like a whirlpool in a river. The whirlpool looks stable, but it is only water moving through a pattern. An alien thinking at large cosmic scales might see something even stranger. To them, civilizations might look like brief chemical reactions on a planet's surface. Wars and cultures could blur together into statistical noise. What we call history might compress into a thin layer in space-time, not because human life lacks meaning, but because meaning itself changes with scale. At small scales, meaning is survival. At human scales, meaning is identity and story. At cosmic scales, meaning may be structure, stability, and entropy. So when humans ask, why don't aliens care about us? They may be asking the wrong question. It's not indifference, it's perspective. An alien doesn't fail to see a human as a person. It simply sees more the particles, the energy flows, the temporary arrangement. And when you see patterns instead of individuals, your thinking changes. Physics doesn't just describe the universe. It quietly decides what feels real. And scale is one of the most powerful decisions it makes. When something happens to you, you don't ask what law produced it. You ask, why did this happen to me? That question already contains emotion, fear, hope, blame, pride, identity. Human thinking is deeply emotional because emotions are useful. They evolved to help small, fragile organisms survive in a dangerous world. Fear makes you run before you calculate. Hope keeps you acting when the outcome is uncertain. Identity tells you which side you're on before you analyze the facts. From a physics point of view, emotion is not irrational. It is efficient. But physics itself does not feel anything. When a rock falls, it does not fall because it wants to. It falls because of gravity. No intention, no anger, no meaning, just cause and effect. Now imagine an alien intelligence whose thinking is much closer to physics than ours. Not cold, not cruel, just less emotional. Such a mind would not ask who is right or who is wrong. It would ask, what forces are acting here? What conditions made this outcome inevitable? From that perspective, human conflicts look very different. A war is not good or evil. It is not heroic or tragic. It is a large-scale interaction of resources, biology, fear, incentives, and feedback loops, like atoms colliding in a heated gas. When atoms collide, we don't say one atom is guilty and the other innocent. We say, given the temperature and pressure, this collision was expected. An alien thinking this way might look at human violence the same way. Not with hatred, not with judgment, but with understanding of causation. This doesn't mean humans are wrong to feel. Emotion is what makes meaning possible at our scale. But it does mean that emotion hides the deeper structure. Physics strips away stories and reveals mechanisms. Humans say, he chose this. Physics says, given the initial conditions, this was the most probable outcome. So the difference between human thinking and alien thinking here is not morality versus immorality. It is experience versus explanation. Humans live inside the system. Aliens may observe it from the outside. And when you step far enough back, emotion fades and causes remain. Physics doesn't excuse behavior. It doesn't condemn it either. It simply explains what happens when the universe follows its rules. And that can feel disturbing, because it suggests that beneath our strongest emotions, the universe is not angry, not hopeful, not cruel, just consistent. Humans have a habit of asking a very particular question. What does this mean? We look at events and search for purpose. We look at suffering and search for lessons. We look at the universe and ask why it exists for us. This makes sense. Humans live inside short lifetimes, limited energy, narrow scales, and emotional brains. Meaning helps us navigate uncertainty. It helps us decide, act, and endure. But physics asks a different kind of question. Physics does not ask what something means. It asks what causes it, what laws are operating, what initial conditions were present, what forces made this outcome unavoidable. Now imagine an alien intelligence shaped by very different physical conditions. Perhaps it experiences time differently. From that perspective, if an alien fails to understand us, it is not because we are insignificant. And it is not because the alien is cold or cruel. It is because we are asking different questions. Humans ask questions shaped by survival and emotion. Aliens may ask questions shaped by structure and law. Both are valid, but they are not the same. And if Feynman were standing here, he might say something like this. Nature doesn't explain itself in human language. It only follows its rules. And if someone else learns those rules more directly than we do, they may see a very different universe, even while looking at the same stars. The universe hasn't chosen sides. It simply works. And understanding that is where curiosity replaces fear.